Radio Oxford's Phone In. Your opinions, your stories, your voice.
Good morning, just after 9 o'clock this Thursday, ahead of the VE Day Bank Holiday weekend. And it's another expert hour. As you know, every day at 9 o'clock, we're bringing you an hour of people with various areas of expertise. Yesterday, it was your consumer rights with Gareth from Which Magazine. Today, relationships. I think it's fair to say that all of us have had to rearrange our lives over the last few weeks, the way we live, and that means the way we interact with our significant others as well, the people that we live closer to than anyone else. And that means that the rules have changed slightly. We've had to rethink our ways of communication, and that's not always easy. And I wonder, it won't be for some months, maybe even years, until we really understand the fallout from this pandemic in terms of how it's affected people's relationships, whether it's with your wife or your partner or your children, maybe parents, other members of your family. There's a lot of positives we can take away. Many people have been forced to re-examine, I think, relationships as a result of this, and many of us discovering new things about ourselves as well. But maybe the mere fact of spending so much time together has proved tricky as well. 0808 100 9100. I'd be really interested to hear from you this hour. Not if you just want to air your dirty laundry and talk about problems, but talk about some of the positive sides of how COVID-19 has affected you and your relationships and how you interact with those closest to you. 0808 100 9100. If you have a problem that you want some help with at the moment, you just can't see your way out of this, then I have a guest who can hopefully help you through all of this. She is relationship counsellor Rachel Blymore. Good morning, Rachel, joining us via Zoom. Good morning, David. Way of everything this morning. Lovely to have you here with us. Thank you very much for coming on. How have you been managing to see, and I use the word very loosely, clients over the last few weeks then? Has it all been done remotely?
Yes. I've been either using the telephone or using various different video platforms. So, Skype, Zoom, things like that. And I've also been using instant messaging. So there are various platforms you can use where you're texting, well, not exactly texting one another, but typing one another, and that actually works quite well.
Has that been
for a few years?
Has that been really helpful? Because it's a different way of seeing clients, isn't it, than the traditional sitting down face to face for an hour and talking through problems once, twice a week, whatever it might be.
It is. I prefer working face to face, obviously, because there's so much more that you can gain from a session when you can see someone's body language and facial expressions and so on. But I'm adapting quite well to video. My clients are adapting quite well to video. There are some people who would only want to see me face to face, so they're not having their sessions at the moment. But it's a very interesting time, and I'm actually quite enjoying having the different ways of working, to be honest. I quite like a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It makes it a bit more varied.
I think we all do. I know I certainly do. I'm much prefer, but there we are. Let's talk about the sort of things that people are facing at the moment. Now, this has changed the way we live, hasn't it? And ergo, it's changed the way that we relate to people as well. Are you finding people are coming to you with new problems, worries and of concerns about issues that might otherwise have been tucked away?
Yeah, I think for most people, we see each other in the morning, and then we see each other in the evening, and then we see each other at weekends, and that's pretty much it. And if there is anything that's, either you've brushed under the carpet or is a bit of a strain on your relationship, you can escape it by going to work or going to see friends or going to, I don't know, a sporting fixture or whatever, but now people are having to face up to whatever it is that's difficult in their relationship that they've been able to ignore before. And I think anyone who's struggling with their relationship as a result of lockdown, it's things that have not been good, that have been able to be ignored, now the volume has been turned up on them, if you like.
Very interesting. I want to bring in Catherine Barber, who's from Home Start, the Oxford and Bicester-based charity that supports young families and parents with children. Good morning, Catherine. How are you doing at the moment? How are you coping with everything?
Good morning, David. Great to speak to you. Yeah, we're great. Our team is all on hand, working from home and supporting families and our volunteers who link with families one-to-one when they're facing stresses or anxiety or isolation. So it's obviously a key time for us.
What sort of challenges have you seen couples and families facing then at the moment, then, Catherine?
Well, I think like Rachel says, we're under so many different strains now and so many different demands on us as parents and in relationships. So one of the challenges, I think, is that it can bring parenting styles to the fore. So if you have a different approach to your partner or different expectations, that can really hit home right now. So it might be that one person thinks it's fine for the kids to have screen time, that might be the necessity for them because they're just been in such a low place that that's how they cope. Whereas another parent might have much, higher expectations about how the kids get entertained, what discipline we use, and obviously there's such huge stress that shouting and threats can be part of family life now, and that can bring strain in the relationship and how we each approach that.
Is that something that you've seen, Rachel, as well, particularly in the way that we approach parenting? Again, you can manage this stuff on an ordinary basis, day to day, week in, week out. But now, when you're doing it all the time, it's difficult.
Yeah. And like Catherine says, one parent, for example, if one parent is working a lot and they don't have very much to do with the upbringing of the children, they'll play with them when they get home and so on. But if it's up to one parent to kind of be in charge of homework and cooking tea and taking kids to clubs and all that kind of thing, when the second parent is then there, like Catherine says, they may not agree with what the original sort of main caregiver is doing, and that can cause arguments. I have seen that in one of the couples that I'm working with, that the dad is struggling with being at home and kind of seeing what goes on day to day, and he doesn't necessarily agree with everything that goes on, but that's what's been happening while he's been at work. And so it's sort of, I think people start to see things in different ways, or see things maybe more for what they are than what they imagined they were, and they have to sort of readjust.
Yeah, and that's really tricky. And what would your advice, I'm not asking you to portray confidences here, of course, but what would your advice be in that situation then, if you've got a partner who suddenly finds themselves at the centre of family life when they might otherwise be at work doing other things and doesn't like the way things are? Do you just keep your mouth closed or compromise, or what?
Well, I think firstly it's about, you have to remember the reason that you're married to the person you're married to is because you chose them, because you love them, and there's something very special between you, and that your partner has been doing the best that they can do with your children. So I think approaching the conversation from that perspective, where you're approaching it in terms of trying to support your partner, trying to understand why your partner does the things that they do, and try to maybe negotiate something where the partner who's been at work a lot of the time feels more comfortable. So like Catherine said, screen time is a huge bugbear between lots of parents, because you've got a busy parent at home and they're trying to cook tea and they're trying to look after 3 kids and they're trying to do this, that and the other, and they're trying to get the washing done, and it's so easy to sit your kids in front of a screen or in front of a TV just to give yourself that space to do what you need to do. And then another person comes into the household and they have idealistic, maybe, views about how children should be. And they're not aware of the pressures. And maybe actually this could open their eyes to what the pressures are. Maybe they would get a view of, maybe they might actually sort of start to have a bit of admiration for what the other parent is juggling when they assumed it was all just looking after the kids,
Screen time, Catherine, does that come up a lot for you at the charity? Because it's such a big one for us at home, and the difficulty we're facing at the moment is that you can put rules down and the children will follow those, but as they grow up, those rules change as well, and their demands are different. It's also, I find, the challenge at the moment with screen time is that it's the way that children are using to communicate with their friends. So if you say shut down your screen, please, you're basically telling them to stop chatting to their friends. That's a difficult one.
Absolutely, yeah, you're absolutely spot on. And for many families, it's the way that we're getting through and we're coping. What Home Start does is for parents who facing strain and difficulty is our volunteers help them in normal times to get out, but at the moment trying to support the parents to have the mental space, I suppose, to feel that they can be with their children and give them that attention. And it might just be a really short amount of time given all the other demands on them of cooking, cleaning and shopping and all the rest of it. But just having that time to be with, have quality time with your children can actually reap dividends in terms of your relationship with your children, and trying as much as possible to have one-to-one time with a particular child so that each child feels that they have some space
with their parent. Yeah, and you work with separated parents as well, don't you, finally, Catherine?
Yeah.
What challenges is that presenting at the moment?
That's a huge issue. I think one of the big things is parents are appreciating the chance to have someone to talk to in their Home Start volunteer or their support worker, and having someone that really listens to them and understands that isolation that they're facing. We're helping with links to practical services as well. But also in terms of the relationship, I think pressures where the parents are separated and having to negotiate those different approaches to parenting and what's acceptable, and given the huge anxiety about going out, whether it's okay to be outside and in the street playing, how they're managing contact, how the resident parent gets shopping, that sort of thing, given the children are with them. So we're really supporting with the whole range of emotional and practical needs that the separated parents might be facing.
Really good luck with the work you're doing. Good to talk to you again. Thank you very much, Catherine Barber from Home Start, the Oxford and Bicester-based charity supporting young parents with children under 5 years old. Rachel Blackmore's my guest. She's a relationship counsellor with us for the next hour. If you've got any questions for Rachel about how best to handle the situation you find yourself in at the moment, 0808 100 9100. You can come on anonymously as well if you want to drop a text, 81333. Start your message with the word Oxford. More coming up in just a moment. It's BBC Radio Oxford at 9:17.
BBC.
This morning with Councillor Rachel Blackmore. Rachel, the most obvious thing to talk about at the moment, of course, is the restrictions that this pandemic has obviously imposed upon us all. How many clients are you having to speak to who've been apart for the last 6 or 7 weeks? I bet you've got a few, haven't you?
I have got a few, but the people I work with who've got a partner that they're not seeing at the moment are people I'm working with individually. I have one couple who are living apart, and like Catherine was just saying, they're separated, and I think that's proving to be quite tricky. But yes, it is meaning that people aren't managing to see the person that they love because either they've been ill or their partner has been ill or they are needing to isolate for other reasons, and I think it's posing quite a strain on some people.
In many ways, this pandemic has done, it's just turned up the volume on all our relationships, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
It really has, in ways perhaps that have surprised us all. What fascinates me, and again, this is something we don't know about, it's the stories that we don't hear. It's the men and women, indeed, with secret families. That happens, we know, of course. And those that are people who are having affairs who now can't carry on with those affairs anymore because they're back with their family who perhaps they might have thought of leaving before this started. There must be an awful lot of that going on that we just don't know about.
I would imagine so. And to be honest, I'm not working with anyone currently who's having an affair. But I have thought about clients that I've worked with previously that have been having affairs that wasn't resolved when I finished working with them. And I have thought about that. I thought, I wonder how that's panning out, because I would imagine that lockdown would be the time where it would be sort of crunch time, make or break, because either you would be locked down with your family and you would realise that maybe you didn't want to leave them after all, that things were okay, that you could carry on. Or maybe things would be so bad that you would realise that actually you just couldn't continue in this situation, that your relationship is completely broken down, and that once lockdown is over, that's it. It's finished.
It is over, yeah. I wonder if solicitors are going to find themselves really busy after this. Let's bring one in. Here's Ursula Rice, who's an Oxford-based family solicitor dealing with these matters, and we talk to you often, I know. Hello, Ursula, how are you? How are you coping? Are you working from home at the moment, are you?
Hi, David. Yes, I'm working from home, currently calling you from my HQ base, viz in bed in my pyjamas. And,
Perfect.
And the advice is as good as ever. Let me tell you, after significant trialling this method of delivering legal advice, I recommend pyjamas.
Perfect. Well, that makes no difference to the advice whatsoever. Just following on from Rachel, what Rachel was saying there, for many of your clients, this will be make or break, won't it now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, as you know, I deal with the dirty end of relationships because it's usually all messy and horrible by the time I get anywhere near it. And I guess the big impacts, there's three big things I would say that I'm seeing. So firstly, controlling behaviour where there is some in the relationship. That's usually off the scale because the opportunity for doing that is, of course, now very high if you're locked down with someone who is controlling. And that's kind of a topic all on its own. But the two other really, really, really big pressure points for separated co-parents, I'd say, are money and the rules around spending time with the children. And we get inquiries about that all the time, usually through our Facebook page, actually. There's a lot of people who are just desperate for how to sort this out. And they travel to our 60-minute clinic thing we do on Facebook. And the contact stuff is all about, well, I've got a court order. Do I have to transfer my children from my house to my ex's house? And the rule is yes, because although the normal rules are don't go out, and there's those 4 reasons, exceptions that you can go out, on top of that, if you have a court order saying your children should be travelling between houses, you are supposed to, you must carry on with it. A lot of people didn't really realise that. I think even the government weren't quite sure about that at the beginning. And the courts are going to see a lot of revenge applications, I think, from desperate parents who've not seen their kids because their other half has sort of tried to disregard that.
So hiding behind the rules in many ways. So we can't possibly come out of the house. We're in lockdown. Tough. You're not going to see the children.
Yeah, there's some of that. I do see some of that. I absolutely do.
Have you heard that, Rachel, really as well then? Sorry, Rachel, have you heard similar stories to that as well?
Well, do you know, I was just thinking that actually I've had the opposite. I've been working with somebody whose partner has been saying that he won't have the children because he doesn't, he's not allowed because it's lockdown. And she's been really struggling with that because she's had to deal with the children's disappointment and upset because dad won't have them. And and then he will say, well, maybe next week. And he will say to the children, maybe next Saturday. And then he'll say, oh no, I still don't think I should be having them. The lockdown is still in place. And so it can kind of go both ways, I think.
That's interesting.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
But that's to do with, who knows what that's about for him. I mean, maybe he is genuinely worried and frightened about catching something from the children. Who knows? How do you deal with that sort of a situation, Rachel?
Well, I'm not working with him. I'm only working with her. And to be honest, I just feel totally helpless when I'm talking to her. And it's not actually out of character for him to be sort of dictating stuff and quite flaky. And I don't know how you would deal with something like that, because if he's refusing to come and pick them up, then he's refusing to come and pick them up, and she has to sort of deal with the fallout from it. And I don't really know, other than reassuring them or making sure that she does the best that she can with them when she has them. And but it is really, really difficult.
And Ursula, you mentioned money there, and again, I mean, it always comes down to money, doesn't it? And what is the advice that you're giving to clients? Is it communicating all the time about setting budgets and just being very clear on where the money is right now when there are so many pressures on family finances?
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, if people have been furloughed, they've just taken a 20% hit to their income. And so the knock-on effect of that is a lot of paying parents are correspondingly dropping down the maintenance that they were paying. And of course, all of this is being done without warning, so people can't pay for it. So the advice that I'm giving to people is you cannot print money. Okay, so you can't make money be there where there isn't money, and unless you this is the time to suspend the usual toxicity if you're in that kind of toxic, really bad après divorce co-parenting relationship. Now is the time to call a short truce and to say, although we hate each other and we're going to have quality arguments later down the line, right now let's look at the figures, because the numbers don't lie. You're not spending as much on petrol. You're not spending as much on work lunches. Could you find an extra £100 for me? I'm not spending as much on school costs, travel to school costs. I'm not going out on the bus anymore. So do you know what? I can manage with £50 less. In spite of the fact that money is so loaded between parents with much more than just the pounds and the shillings and the pence. It's actually about control. It's about why you don't support my children's needs. That means you're a lesser parent, you're a rubbish parent. It's loaded with lots of other stuff. But now is the time to not think about that and concentrate on the numbers. If you've got to go rice and beans, you've got to go rice and beans. That's what you've got to eat. Chop your expenditure. Your kids still need to eat. They still need the heating on, even though it's May, because it's a bit dodgy sometimes. They still need stuff. And it is because the reality is that you can't print money. No lawyer can print money for anybody. So it's about being sensible. It's about being reasonable, even just in this very short time frame. Argue like idiots later down the line. Fill your boots. Right now, grow up. That's my advice. Really difficult advice to give, to be honest.
It is, yeah. And we'll see if Rachel agrees with you in a moment. Thank you very much, Ursula Rice from Family First Solicitors. We'll talk to you again soon, I know. And back with you, Rachel, in just a moment. We'll talk about dating online and all sorts of other things that are going on at the moment. It's relationship advice for this hour on 0808 109 100 if you want to join in with us. BBC Radio Oxford at 9:33 now.
BBC Radio Oxford. Travel.
And here's our Ryan.
Well, the A40 a little bit busier this morning from Witney East down as far as Barnard Gate. Rest of the main routes coping fine, no problems or delays on the A34 or the M40. And Oxford City Centre, Banbury Town Centre, Abingdon Town Centre all looking good too. On the trains, all services running to time on the departure boards. BBC Radio Oxford Travel, I'm Al Ryan.
Call with your travel news. 0808 100 9111. BBC Radio Oxford. Travel.
Good morning. Sophie's got your news headlines at 9:33 now.
There needs to be a close look at why COVID-19 is disproportionately affecting Black, Asian and other ethnic minority groups. That's according to Oxford City Councillor and Equalities campaigner Shaista Aziz, as figures show a third of critically ill coronavirus patients identify as Black, Asian or from minority ethnic communities. The Bank of England is warning that the coronavirus pandemic will push the UK economy into its deepest recession on record. Analysts say it will shrink by 14% this year, even if lockdown is relaxed in June. It's emerged that nearly 500,000 surgical gowns intended for frontline NHS staff have been impounded in a warehouse. They were flown into RAF Bryce Norton from Turkey last month, but have been found not to meet British safety standards. The Cabinet will review the UK's lockdown rules later, with Boris Johnson suggesting some could be eased from Monday. It's thought the stay-at-home message could be scrapped. And the actor Andy Serkis is to give a continuous 12-hour live reading of The Hobbit starting at 10 a.m. tomorrow at his home in Oxfordshire. The star, who played Gollum in Lord of the Rings, says the money raised from the performance will go to the NHS and the parenting charity Best Beginnings.
This is the BBC.
On Friday, it's a special bank holiday as we commemorate the 75th anniversary of VE Day.
The land, sea and air forces of Nazi Germany surrendered unconditionally.
We were to have street parties, but even though things have changed, to quote Winston Churchill,
we may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing.
We'd like you to celebrate by making your own special VE Day Great British Bunting to display in your windows.
Download the template at bbc.co.uk/make a difference.
We have never seen a greater day than this.
BBC Radio Oxford.
Join us in celebration this Friday.
Your 3-day forecast. BBC Radio Oxford. Weather.
Mostly dry with sunny spells this morning. Later there'll be a few isolated heavy showers, but feeling warm with highs of 22 Celsius, that's 72 Fahrenheit. Any showers will die away tonight to leave it mostly dry with some clear spells and some patchy mist or fog. Feeling milder than recently, 8 Celsius the low overnight. Then that...
Radio Oxford, 9 o'clock phone in. It's Rachel Blackmore who's my guest this morning. We're talking relationship advice. Rachel, we've got a question. It's recorded a little earlier from Alan, who couldn't come on, but here's Alan in Oxford. This is what he had to say.
My name's Alan. I'm from Oxford, and I'm going to get married to my fiancée, Elizabeth, and we're going to live together. And I was wanting to know how to go on, because she's going to give me my carer, you see. I need some help. I need a bit of advice to, get them going,
I don't know if how much of that you got, Rachel. He's getting married to his fiancée Elizabeth. They're going to live together. In the meantime, he's disabled and he has a carer, but she's going to take on the role of being part-time carer as well. And he's after a little bit of advice. I don't know where you begin with that.
Okay. So I imagine that Alan has a carer who isn't Elizabeth at the moment, and Elizabeth is going to be marrying him, living with him, and taking over the role of carer as well. Is that right?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Well, I think immediately really is the fact that Elizabeth will also have needs, although Alan is disabled and I'm imagining has physical disabilities that he needs Elizabeth to support him with. Whether Elizabeth is disabled or not, she will still have needs. And so it's Alan's responsibility, if you like, to make sure that he's taking care of her too. That he's caring for her too, but in different ways, so that it doesn't just feel as though she's kind of there to provide everything for him and for him to take everything, that he also gives what he can back to her in their relationship. Really interesting.
Alan, if you want to call us back on that, but good advice on that one. Alan, good luck, and good luck with Elizabeth. We've talked a lot about, it's all been about couples that are in relationships at the moment, but if you're single, this must be a really difficult time as well, Rachel, because apart from the isolation, if you are living on your own, there are no opportunities to meet anybody. Well, apart from, of course, online. Which brings us on to Chris Grayson, who's from Slow Dating. They run speed dating nights in Oxford. Good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning.
Your business must have been wiped out by this, I would imagine, or are you doing things virtually?
Yeah, I guess when the news came upon us, I guess, wow, what do we do? We normally operate, for those that don't know, speed dating is an event where singles come along and they all meet for the first time and basically get 4 minutes to speak to however many singles there, generally like 15 couples, and that's generally how it works. Obviously, with the bars shutting down, that pretty much put paid to our business temporarily.
So what have you done? Are you just sitting waiting for us to start up again?
Well, we've had an idea for a little while and to actually take speed dating online, and it was something that we thought about for a while, but because speed dating is generally quite niche, we sort of thought, well, it might just conflict with our existing business model, but I guess forced to, and because we don't know when bars are going to be open and we don't know when face-to-face talking is going to be acceptable, we thought, well, we've got to give this a go, and actually we've launched it 3 weeks ago, and it's been really successful and well received. Obviously a lot of people out there are on their own or with children or with elderly, relatives and just want some, not just companionship, but sort of speaking to other people in a similar situation.
Yeah, it is companionship, isn't it? Rachel, if you are single at the moment, the dating sites must be doing, those that have video facilities must be doing a storm.
Well, you would imagine so, wouldn't you? I find it fascinating how everyone's adapting all these new ways that you would never even have considered before. I think we're realizing now kind of how easy we had it really. And I wonder if Chris's business will boom after everybody has been let out, because they're suddenly finally really excited about being able to see people face to face again. And if they've been a bit reticent about speed dating, maybe they're really sort of raring to give it a go. But the idea of doing it over video is really interesting, because some people just really hate being on video, don't they? They really hate sort of all the awkwardness, or they're technophobes, or they don't understand how they do it and so on. And there can be all these barriers to it. But on the other hand, it does open up whole new ways of doing things that people perhaps wouldn't have bothered with before. They'd send a few messages, and if they decided they wanted to meet up, then they would. But I suppose the video thing kind of takes the awkwardness out of it, because if you're on a video call with somebody and you really don't like them, or you don't like the sound of their voice or what they're saying or whatever, you can just hit the
cut
end.
the line, yeah. And also, but you have much more control. I was never one for really hanging out in bars. I used to do it a lot when I was single, but I never particularly enjoyed it. If I'm honest, I don't know how many people really do. And the idea of being able to control what you look like, the background, the filters and everything, you have a lot more control over how you present yourself to somebody else, don't you? Is that fair, Alan?
And it's safer.
Yeah, and it's definitely safer. Alan, is that fair?
Well, basically, you do have a lot of control. I think it's interesting, like you say, that the society is really changing. I think when you go out to bar, there's a lot of nerves concerned with that. A lot of the ladies like to come in groups. So actually the online thing takes a lot of that away. You don't have to find a babysitter, where you're going to park, what you're going to drink. You still got to see what you look like a little bit. But it's a really good way of just having 4 minutes to see if you've got a bit of connection with someone and just be yourself and have a chat in the comfort of your own home without those nerves. Obviously, it might be some still, but without the nerves that of going into somewhere new and who's all these people going to be. You're in your home, so I think it's going to be a little bit more relaxed. Obviously, video's not for everyone, but I think we're learning to cope with that as a necessity at the moment.
Really interesting. Thank you very much, Alan. Rachel, back with you in just a moment. It's BBC Radio Oxford at 9:45. Let's get some more from Al Ryan. Control, Laura Branigan. Rachel Blackmore, relationship counsellor, has been my guest this last hour. As is often the case, Rachel, we've barely scratched the surface. There's never enough time. You'll have to come back and do this again and take some more calls. I'm sure there's no shortage of questions for you. If you are having a problem with your relationship at the moment, with whoever that other person might be, it all begins, doesn't it, with a difficult conversation. How on earth do you begin with that? And how do you find the right moment, even?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the crux of it, really, isn't it? It's the thing is, I suppose one of the things is don't sweep stuff under the carpet, but at the same time, sort of pick your battles. So if they're getting on your nerves because they're, I don't know, whistling while they're making a cup of tea, don't bite their head off over it, and probably don't bring it up later either. But if there's stuff that feels really irksome and it's really bothering you and you need to talk about it, don't talk about it at the point of irritation, at the point of sort of anger. Leave it for a little while and pick your moment later on. And don't, you know how we all really hate it when someone says, I think we need to have a chat. It kind of stirs up this kind of horrible sort of, I'm in trouble sort of sensation. So I think maybe there are other ways of going about that. So can we have a chat about, or I was wondering if you'd like to talk about, or how are you feeling about, or I've been thinking about, and then kind of introduce it in a more gentle way. So you're not sort of you're not telling them that you are going to tell them off or have a go at them. It's about, let's talk this through. Let's see if we can come to some sort of outcome that's going to be satisfying for both of us, and realizing and remembering that you're in a team. You're in this together. It's about the two of you navigating it together rather than pointing fingers, blaming. It's about owning your own feelings. So if your partner is getting on your nerves because they're doing this, this, and this, that's kind of your fault in a way. That's your problem that they're getting on your nerves. But you do need to express that. But it's not about telling them that they're in the wrong. It's about explaining that what they are doing is bothering you in this way, and how can you kind of find a solution to that doesn't impact either one of you, where you feel that you're the one doing all the changing, the other person is just dictating.
That's such brilliant advice, Richard. The idea of walking away from something, even though you feel like you want to explode in the moment, is probably the single best bit of advice we've ever had on this programme. Because it can save the day, can't it? I mean, I've done it myself enough times where I think I'm about to blow up. And if you just walk away, it's that thing of never sending an email late at night. It's the same thing, isn't it? Walk away and then come back to it.
Yeah, and it also means that you can, if you're talking about it later, there is much more chance that you'll be able to stick to the issue. If you're talking about something in anger, you tend to go, and you always do this, and you always do that, and you kind of bring in all this other stuff, all this ammunition that you've got against them, and they end up feeling totally annihilated by it. And it's really not helpful, because then their defenses go up and then they shout back. And it's just, if you can speak about it calmly, if you can stick to the issue, if you can make an agreement on the outset that you are, trying to find a solution together, you're adapting together, and that it's going to be a difficult conversation, but actually you need to try and protect one another's feelings. So you could start the conversation by saying, look, this is going to be a really difficult conversation for us. We don't want to hurt one another, but we need to find a way of navigating this, so that we both feel better at the end, not so that we both feel like we've sort of knock 7 bells out of each other.
Yeah, however tempting it might be. And often that row is about something else entirely at the time, isn't it? Thank you very much, Rachel. We could talk and talk and talk, and we will. Can we come up, speak to you again in the next week or so? Get something in the diary. That would be lovely if we can.
That would be great. I've got loads more to say.
Yeah, I bet. Thank you. So have I. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you. It's always the way. Have a lovely weekend. If you can. I've always got plenty more to say, but I'm being thrown out of here. Cat's coming up in just a second. BBC Radio Oxford, 3 minutes to 10. Ryan is